Welcome to the Victory Blastchill Shock Freezer webinar. Today we have with me, I'm Richard Baboni, the President of Victory. We have Mark Hike, our IT Manager, and Jim Kehoe, our Director of Engineering. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. We had a great turnout this morning, and it looks like everybody who signed up for this afternoon is here as well. It's a very exciting launch, this new Blastchill Shock Freezer line, something that I personally fought very hard for with the Alley management team to allow us to change our suppliers. Many of you know that our Alley Group supplier in the past was Williams from the UK, and we're going to be changing to Friulinox in Italy. So can I have the next slide, please? Just taking a look at this cover picture, you can see, just by the cutout, significant differences in the new product we're talking about. And again, it's tied into the design upgrades that we're across the line in all the Victory products that we are upgrading line by line. So the first thing is a new aesthetic design. You can see it's a very sleek design. Look just at the handle. The finish is all stainless steel on this model, inside and out, very clean. The second point is the latest technology, brand new controller. We'll talk about that more as we get into the webinar. And the third thing is, of course, a much more complete range. These are the three goals I have as we go through all of our product line renovations. Can I have the next slide, please? So here in this slide, I wanted to show you a picture of the Friulinox facility in northeastern Italy. It's in Pordenone, Veneto, just about an hour's drive from Venice. Friulinox is in the area in the northeast. It's kind of like the Silicon Valley for the production of food service equipment. There's a lot of stainless steel manufacturing going on there. In fact, Alley has more than a half a dozen companies up in that area of the world alone. They are right in the neighborhood, in the heart of the neighborhood, where blast chillers are made for Irinox, for American Panel, for not far from where they're made for, I want to say Altoshem, but I think it's the other brand that begins with the name. Anyway, they're all there in the northeastern part of Italy. The nice thing is that this is an Alley Group company that has been doing blast chillers for over 20 years. In fact, their production is dedicated to blast chillers and to refrigerated cells. They're not making refrigerators, freezers, and spec products like we do in this facility. Half the facility is completely dedicated to the production of blast chiller and shock freezers. So why did I want to make this transition from Williams? Because Williams was a good product, but this is a better product. This is a higher quality product. As I said, stainless steel construction inside and out, 304, 1810 stainless steel. It offers the blast chilling and shock freezing capability, which we didn't have before. We'll talk about that more. It has the technology, it has all the options, all the bells and whistles. This product will allow Victory to go head-to-head with anyone on the market in the United States. Can I have the next slide, please? Today, my objective is not to talk about why people want to buy a blast chiller or shock freezer. This is something that's already out in the market, that you've already been talked to in the past and instructed on, why you want to sell this very valuable piece of equipment to your end users. What I do want to do today is point out the newness in this Victory offering and why we are giving people great reasons to look at Victory with this exciting new line. So what's the key point, the key differentiation point between Williams and Friulinox product is the shock freezing capability. Shock freezing is fundamental for ensuring that the surface quality of the product is not going to get damaged. You know, if you store meat in your freezer at home and you take a nice juicy cut of red meat, you know your freezer is going to take a long time to get that frozen to the core, and when you thaw out that product and go to use it, it's typically going to run. You're going to have a watery, probably bloody liquid running all over your countertop. That's because when you do the slow freezing process, you get macrocrystal formation. Instead, when you do the shock freezing process, you get microcrystals. And the microcrystals are what allow you to maintain the maximum product quality. We're talking about the taste, we're talking about the texture, we're talking about maintaining the original size and shape and weight of the product. This is very important because it translates into real dollars for the people that are using these in large production facilities and catering facilities. If your product is shriveling up and not having the same weight and you're serving based on portion size, you're obviously going to be losing more money than you could if you were controlling the process with a shock freezer. Another fundamental point is that shock freezing allows you to extend the usable life of the food products that you're working with from a few days to a few months. And again, this allows for significant organizational benefits in how an operation prepares and plans its food, manages its processing in off-peak times, is able to buy ingredients with a longer-term horizon, use ingredients that are maybe out of season and have them available for several months going forward past the normal season. So shock freezing is a very important tool that gives a lot of flexibility to a chef and to the whole food service operation. Next slide, please. Here you get a first glimpse at part of the range that we will be offering. These are some of the reach-in models we'll have. The reach-in models will start with 5 trays, move up to 8. There's also 12, 16, 20. It's a very vast range. And as you can see, it's a totally new product line, totally different than the Williams line, and this thanks to the collaboration with our Audi Group partner, Frulinox. This series is again in 100% stainless 304 inside and out, offering a complete range that is second to none. Next slide, please. Here you have a first glimpse at the roll-in model. This roll-in model could just as well be a pass-through model with the door on the back. Something I want to point out here is that our models are compatible with Rational and our sister company Aloma combi ovens, as well as other models, though except most standard combi trolleys. On the roll-in model in particular, you'll notice that this unit has a platform on the bottom, so it's an insulated platform. This is required when you're talking about a shock freezing unit. Now, what's optional is whether or not you're going to have the ramps or you're going to have it recessed into the pavement in the kitchen where it's located. In this case, with the ramps, that little platform on the bottom has that circular disc on the left. You can see that that's where the drain water comes out. If instead it's going to be recessed in the pavement, we have to know that at the time of the order, and the factory will raise that exit hole for the drain up so that it can be plumbed for on location. Clearly, if you were getting a pass-through unit, you would have to have 2 ramps. The ramps, again, are totally in stainless steel. You can have the next slide, please. Here's a closer look at the new VBCF electronic control. The V is for victory, B, blast, chill, and F for freezer. So blast chilling and shock freezing. You see that it ties in with the UltraSpec branding. The control is actually manufactured by the same company that manufactures our UltraSpec and new V-Series controllers. So some of the programming and features are going to be similar and familiar to the people who are already using our new UltraSpec line and our new V-Series line. Let's take a look at these buttons up close and kind of go around the clock, starting from the top right, where you have the on button. That's the power on, and we'll put the unit in standby button. The button below that is the start-stop button for the actual program cycle that you've selected. The buttons to the immediate left, soft on top and hard on the bottom, with 37 degrees on the left and 0 on the right. That gives you the choice of hard or soft, blast chilling on the left, or shock freezing in the center. As you can see, the snowflake is bigger in one case or smaller in the other case. That's a visual representation of the macro crystal or the micro crystals for the 3 smaller ones. As you move to the top left, there's a defrost button. We're going to explain the defrost cycle to you. Underneath that is a probe button. This unit comes with a single probe that has 4 sensors built into it. So it's a multi-point sensor probe for very high precision. This probe button will allow you to monitor the temperature at the 4 probe points during the course of the cycle. As an option, you can order single-point probes, and you can use up to 4 single-point probes if there's a specific application where the chef prefers to have the individual probes on different levels, let's say, within the same blast chiller or shock freezing unit. Underneath the probe button is a dual function button. If the optional UV sterilization light has been purchased, you can activate it with this button. If not, this button serves to activate the electrical resistance in the multi-point probe, which is standard on this line. You want to use that electrical resistance when you're taking the probe out of a frozen product to make sure that you don't damage the probe. It heats the tip of the probe just for a few seconds so it doesn't damage the quality of the product either, and it makes extraction much easier. On the bottom left, you have the hazard alarm button that will allow you to access the alarms that have been recorded. Here again, we have onboard memory. In this case, up to 10 alarms will be recorded before they rewrite. There is again the real-time clock feature on this unit, which is very nice, so you will get the date and timestamp information as well as the duration in case of a power outage. In the center, under the display window, there's the programming buttons, very similar, exactly similar actually to the UltraSpec and V-Series line, where you scroll up and down and access the menu functions with the one in the center. A really neat feature on this particular blast chiller series is the next button, which is again a dual function button. This button allows you to activate a pre-cooling function, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and the other function allows you to activate is variable evaporator fan speed. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So here's a recap in a couple of pages of the key points that you'll see with the new VBCF electronic control. First of all, you'll probably notice right away when you saw the pictures, it's highly visible and easy to access. The control units are actually recessed in the door panels on the reach-in models. These controls give you very precise blast chilling and shock freezing cycles. Blast chilling cycle right out of the oven could be 194 degrees down to 37 degrees in 90 minutes, or shock freezing the same right out of the oven to 0 degrees within 240 minutes. You have the option, as I mentioned earlier, of a hard or soft chill cycle. This is particularly useful in the blast chilling phase. You can do it in automatic with the probe, or you can do it on a timed basis. The smart logic in the software has the ability to recognize whether the core probe is inserted or not in the product. You don't have to tell it that it's been inserted in the product. If you don't insert it in the product, it will run on a time cycle. Again, the one-touch display of HACCP alarms we already talked about. This unit does have, as our UltraSpec units do, a capacitor to back up the data in memory. 2 or 3 days for sure. We've seen it last up beyond 90 hours in tests we've done here in the factory. The one-touch pre-cooling function we mentioned, and I'm going to have a separate slide on that because it's very important, as is the infinity mode, which is a constant on cycle, which will have an adjustable set point, so you can regulate that it won't go below a certain temperature. But if you want to run that shock freezer at -40 constantly, you can do that with the infinity mode. Next slide, please. Another great benefit of this control is that it will allow for 100 programs stored in memory. 67 of these programs are prepared by expert chefs that Fulinox has been collaborating with over the years. 30 programs can be used for customized recipes that the chefs want to put based on their specific needs and their specific application. We talked earlier about the adjustable fan speed, and we'll talk about that again some more. The automatic conservation mode. So at the end of the cycle, whether it's a blast chilling or shock freezing cycle, the software knows to maintain that final temperature, either 37 degrees or 0 degrees. So if you, say, run a blast chilling or shock freezing cycle at the end of the night, you leave for the night, you know for sure that at the end of the program, it's going to go into conservation mode and hold that product at the desired temperature for you until you return the next morning. We also have some compressor protection on this unit, and there is a micro switch that will cut out the evaporator fan and compressor when the door is open so all the cold does not blow right out of the unit. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the one-touch pre-cooling function, because this is a function that not all of our competitors have. As I mentioned earlier, it's activated by a shared button on the control panel, the same button that allows you to adjust the evaporator's fan speed. The pre-cooling function will be automatically disabled once you open the door to put product in. So you don't have to wait till it goes down through the whole cycle. If you do wait, it will take the air temperature inside the cabinet down to 31 degrees. And this is, to understand why this is useful, think about when you preheat your oven at home. It's the reverse process of that. When you preheat your oven before you put in a frozen pizza or other things that you want to cook at the right temperature, by pre-cooling the blast chiller, you're going to have the immediate benefit of compensating for some of that heat that is there and humidity when you take a product right out of the oven and put it in a blast chiller. You're going to reduce the total time necessary because static blast chilling has already begun, because you don't have to wait for the unit to get cold. And thereby, you're going to achieve the best results by not dehydrating your product or oxidizing the fats in the product. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the adjustable evaporator fan speed, because this is what really gives a chef complete control. You've already seen that there are automatic cycles, there are time cycles. This unit has an extreme amount of flexibility, and even more so by the fact that during the course of the cycle, you can go to that shared button and request the fan speed be reduced. The range you can reduce the speed to is between 30 and 100% of the maximum velocity. This is perfect for somebody who's working with delicate products. Think of green leafy vegetables, for example, where you have to be very careful to not dry out the surface, or other products where you have to be very careful not to let brine form on the surface. Once again, restoring to the chef control over the process. And the interesting thing is that the Fruinox models were designed with strict collaboration of expert chefs. So really working hand in hand with the end users to provide a product that best meets their real-life needs. Next slide. Infinity mode. So again, infinity mode is a constant on cycle with an adjustable set point that you can pick. You can set it -5, -10, -20, -40. The machine is going to run until it hits that temperature, or run constantly if you let it if you set it at -40. So this is very useful in certain applications. For example, think about a catering operation where they're processing huge quantities of product. You can put that product in there, bring it down as fast as possible if that particular product allows, and just go with the temperature, monitoring the core temperature. And once it's done, take it out, pop in the next batch. Really allows you to get a lot of work done. Another application where this is used very often is for gelato ice cream preparation. Get that rapid shock freeze on the surface to keep that fluffy appearance of the product and make it look its best when it's later put into the display cases. Here's another thing that's going to be very interesting, a recipe book with the programs that we talked about, the 67 programs developed by expert chefs. Here you can see it's the version in Italian with the other 4 languages that they prepared for Europe. We're going to be preparing our own version, of course, for victory in the United States. Someone was asking on the call earlier today, how do we handle soups and liquids? Is there a special program for that? And yes, look at the bottom of this page. Program number 80 says sauces and soups. Right there. The other ones here are ratatouille, flan, potatoes. There are, as we said, 67 different options, and you have the option of saving your own as you go along. Now moving on to the characteristics of the cabinet construction. So again, stainless steel 304, exterior is going to have a Scotch-Brite satin finish. The interior has die-formed floors with rounded corners and a central drain. The foam is high-density CFC-H, CFC-free, expanded polyurethane insulation, over 3 inches thick. You do have anti-condensate perimeter heating around the door openings, non-toxic coated evaporator coils. The cover for the evaporator fan with the evaporator fan will open easily to get access to the coil to clean it out. As I mentioned earlier, one heated high-precision 4-point multi-sensor probe is standard. Adjustable stainless steel legs are standard as well. The doors do have self-closing hinges and will stay open at 100 degrees to allow for easy loading and unloading of the product in the units. Again, on the door construction, we have this economic vertical door handle, which you've seen. Snap-in-place magnetic gaskets, easy to replace. Stainless steel construction on the door as well. The refrigeration system is 404. Has a hermetically sealed compressor with overload protection. The evaporator has a high flow rate fan, very efficient for cooling. The airflow in our units is indirect, and that is that the air is pulled off the product through the evaporator fan and then recirculated through the unit. Some other units blow the product on the fan, the fan blows the air on the product, causing the product to dry out faster and not have the optimum surface conditions. Here we're taking the humidity and the warmth away from the product for optimum airflow. Storage arrangements inside, you'll see in the next picture, we have a stainless steel wire rack structure. That's the air circulate at its best, which can easily come off. It slips on and off. It doesn't need any tools to remove. The number of pans clearly is going to vary by model, and the sizes will also vary. We have units that handle 12 by 20 pans and units that handle 18 by 26. Spacing between the pans is on 2.5-inch centers. On the next slide, we see some close-up photos of these enhanced design features. So the highly visible and ergonomic LCD control panel is right there, right in your line of sight. No one has to reach for it. It's very easy to change any parameters during the course of the cycle or to ask for information on how much time is left or what the probe temperatures are at throughout the cycle. Here's a close-up of the die-formed corners. Very easy to clean, but also helps with the air circulation inside the cabinet when the speeds are so high. The stainless steel rack is shown in the next picture. And again, a little shot of the door handle, very sleek, easy to pull vertical door handles. Then we have a picture of the probe, which we'll see in greater detail in the next slide. So here you can see that the 4 thermocouples start from the outside in, so temperature reading number 1 is the closest to the point, and then proceeds 2, 3, 4 being closest to the handle. Next slide, please. This is just a slide where we wanted to point out the correct positioning of the probe inserted in the product. You don't want the handle part beyond the probe tip to be touching the surface of the product. You don't want to be moving the product side to side or rotating it, the probe, when you're taking it out of the product. You want to slide it in and out on the diagonal, take it out just as you've inserted it, and again, when you're working with the frozen product, using the electric heater resistance to facilitate the extraction. Next slide, please. This is another interesting choice that they made to have the blast chillers predisposed for optional core probes for vacuum packaging. So a lot of people doing sous vide work, especially in Europe. On the left you see the black plug is what covers the connection point for this optional probe. The middle is when it's connected, and the right shows you how it's actually used. You put a piece of tape over the bag and then insert the probe through the tape into the product to monitor the temperature. Next slide, please. This is a total recap of the standard features. It does cover some of the things we've already talked about on the controller. Soft and hard, timed or core probe controlled blast chilling. The same for shock freezing. Automatic recognition of the probe. Automatic chilling freezing cycles controlled by the probe smart logic. Automatic conservation mode at the end of the chilling or freezing cycle. The one-touch pre-cooling function we discussed, the adjustable evaporator fan speeds, the infinity mode. Next slide, please. Let's see what's new here. This is basically everything we've already covered, so I'm going to pass on that. Now we'll talk a little bit about the options and the accessories. So, can you get a printer? Yes. The printer is not standard on these models. It has to be ordered at the time we're producing it at the factory. The optional core probe for vacuum packaging for the sous vide applications we talked about can be purchased separately. You can also get the sterilization light. Important to know, as many of you have already understood, that the sterilization light is for sterilizing the chamber after the cycle has been completed. It is not for sterilizing food. On the next slide, we see additional options and accessories that are available. RS-485 serial interface, like we have as an option on the UltraSpec line, is available to connect via Modbus communication to remote PC interfaces. It can also be provided with a USB interface, so you can take your flash drive and download data right on the front of the machine. As I said at the very beginning, additional single sensor core probes are an option. If somebody wants to run with 1, 2, 3, 4 single point probes instead of the standard multi-point probe, they can order those separately. Casters are available to replace the legs if desired, and these units are available with remote condensation options. Okay, so now on the next slide, you're going to get the first glimpse at the range that we're talking about. This page is only reach-in models. You'll see the VBCF, the model numbering is the blast chiller freezer, the 5 number of levels or trays. The number immediately to the right, the 45 in this case, indicates the quantity in terms of pounds that you can blast freeze in the 90-minute window that is required to bring it down to 37 degrees, or the 240-minute window to bring it down to 0 degrees. There are two models with VBCF 545, and the second has a U after it. The U is the nomenclature we've adopted for the United States version. The standard versions in Europe are the Gastronorm versions. They work mostly off the 12 by 20, which is the Gastronorm 1.1, or else the Gastronorm 2.1s. Here instead, we like to use the sheet pans, the 18 by 26 pans. So those models that are specific are designated with a U. So right now on the reach-in models, the models are dedicated. There's not a universal wire rack solution for the time being. It's something we're talking about developing with Fruinox. Another option to get by in the interim would be to put the 18 by 26 tray in the box and then set the 12 by 20 pan on top of that as a short-term solution. But we are looking at the wire rack modification. So as you can see, we start with the 5 trays, move to the 8 trays, 12, 16, back to 12 again on a bigger unit, though, that has double depth. So the first one you'll see, instead of 12 by 20 pans, it actually holds 24. And you can see that as the number of trays increases, so does the capacity, the range going from 45 pounds up to 70, 100, 140, 200. So a much broader range than we previously offered. A range, as I said earlier, that's second to none for what's offered in the marketplace today. Next slide, please. So here we have the roll-in models. The roll-in models are going to start from 175 pounds and up. They cover the whole range we previously had through 465 and 660, but go beyond that, and will now also do 925, 1,000, up to 1,350 pounds. Clearly, these are very specific applications. In this case, the roll-in model becomes a little bit like a tunnel. They're kind of in sections that are attached together. But it's good to know that these are available for certain applications of batch processing that might require them. On the next page, you'll see the pass-through models, which are basically the same models with the identical dimensions, just having an extra 5.5 inches on the depth to cover the additional door that's on the back side of the unit. So as we discussed previously, with the roll-in and pass-through units, need to make that determination if they're going to be recessed or if they're going to be above the pavement with the insulated floor and the corresponding stainless steel ramps. So the reach-in models are the models we're going to be stocking here in Cherry Hill. We actually already have our first containers arrived. We've got about 35 models in stock. Well before I finished up my spec sheets and my sales documentation, actually, but we're working on that and getting it done in the next week, 10 days. The roll-in and pass-through models instead are going to be by order only. So what does that mean in terms of lead time? We're talking about 4 weeks standard production time in the factory, another 4 transit time by ocean. So we're looking at, on the safe side, 8 to 10 weeks. I would quote 9 to 10 weeks. These are really for specific projects, and usually that lead time is not an issue. Great. We're going to open it up for question and answers at this point. This morning's session, we unmuted everybody, and there were a lot of people, over 60 people on the call, so it got to be difficult to hear. This afternoon, we're about half that number, so hopefully it'll be better. If we do have difficulty hearing, what we're going to do is ask people to mute themselves and then only unmute themselves if they do want to ask a question. Okay, the floor is open for questions and answers. Who's got one for us?
Could you go through the control panel again, please?
Yes, I certainly can. You go back to the slide at the beginning. One of the things that we're working on is a separate PowerPoint presentation where we actually are taking photos of an operator pushing the buttons and describing the cycle as he goes through the phases. So you'll be getting a separate PowerPoint, which will be something you can, actually it will probably be a PDF, which you can easily download to your computer or to your iPad, and it'll help you walk through the steps with a prospective customer. Okay, so as we're looking at the controller, again, starting on the top right, you have the power on button. That's going to turn the unit into a standby mode. Once you're in the standby mode, you're going to have to select your cycle. So we have the automatic cycles that are available or the program cycle. So you can choose with the buttons immediately to the left of the power either to work with the blast chilling mode or the shock freezing mode in either a soft or hard cycle that's regulated by the probe. So these buttons on the top right are going to allow you to use the automatic cycle feature, okay? You could also choose just to work on a time basis if you want. So that's a separate button, and we'll show you how to do that. When you choose the soft cycle, you'll see on the left hand, still in the upper right quadrant, just to the right of the screen, the first soft button has one snowflake. The one snowflake is the one for the blast chilling. And you'll see in the middle it says plus 37 degrees F. That's the end result of your blast chilling cycle. Take it out of the oven, throw it in there hot. You want to be down at 37 degrees to get through that critical zone where bacteria can grow. You have to have that happen in 90 minutes. So you do it in your blast chilling cycle. The soft option starts off the fan at a slower rate. So it cools down the product, in particular when you have delicate products, when you have vegetable products, leafy vegetable products. You want to start slower so that it cools off before the high fan speed kicks in. So that's what you can do with the top right quadrant. You select the function, and then you use the button that has the blue start and the red stop. That actually activates the cycle. Okay, so the top right button turns on the machine, puts it in standby mode. You pick the cycle, and then with the button immediately under the power button, you start or stop the cycle. If we move to the top left of the display, you have the defrost button. So blast chillers, when they're running constantly to optimize the production, don't necessarily have to defrost after every cycle because you're introducing hot food into the unit all the time, and that helps to not let the evaporator get impacted with ice. Okay, when you do want, and this is the difference with the Williams product. The Williams product we had previously would do an automatic defrost at the end of every cycle, and people would have downtime and have to wait, and they weren't happy about that. You don't have that here. On this unit, you choose when you want to do the manual defrost. You activate the frost with that one-touch button. You leave the door open. The fan is going to blow the air past the evaporator, circulating that ambient room temperature, and it's going to defrost the unit very quickly. The water that comes off is going to be channeled through the drain pipe in the center of the unit into a collection pan that's under the evaporator. That is the standard on the reach-in models. As an alternative, that drain pipe can be plumbed directly into the drain in the facility if the unit is not going to be needed to move. The button underneath the defrost button says probe on it. That probe button is the one that will allow you to see the temperatures on the 4 sensors on the multi-point probe during the operation. So you will be able to tell how the probe is inserted in the product and where the warmest part of the product is. You could actually insert the probe through the core of the product and have the point come out the other side and be in the air, and this smart controller is going to know that that tip is not at the core. It's going to know that the warmest temperature is read in the middle of the product, and it's going to adjust the cycle based on where it reads the warmest temperature. This probe button is also used eventually if you go with the single probe temperature options instead of the multi-point probe. That'll let you read the various temperatures if you're using 1, 2, or 3 probes instead of the multi-point probe. Okay? The next button down is a dual function button. On the top you see it says UVC, and on the bottom it says heating. And it has the image of the light, and it has the image of a probe with a red tip. The image of the light is if you purchase the optional UV sterilization lamp, that's what's going to activate the lamp at the end of the cycle. If instead you don't, you will still have the heated probe because the heated probe is standard on our units. Okay, and when you're going to use the heated probe is when you run a shock freezing cycle, product is frozen to the core, you want to take out the probe, and you press that for a few seconds as an electrical resistance that heats it enough for you to extract it easily. On the bottom left, we have the HACCP button. The HACCP display button is going to allow you to access the alarms, the eventual alarms that are stored in memory, up to 10 alarms stored in memory. Once again, there's the option to set it up for a USB recorder, very similar to the UltraSpec product. The up arrow and the down arrow let you scroll through the program menus. If you want to access one of the preset 67 recipes that the expert chefs from Fluinox have prepared, this is where you would access that. You go into the program mode, you go down, you say, I want the soup recipe, I'm looking for program number 80, and you select that, and you set that to go automatically afterwards. The final button on the bottom right is the dual function evaporator fan speed and the pre-cooling button. Okay? When the cycle that you've chosen is running, if you want to customize that cycle and lower the fan speed. And instead of running at 100%, you want to run at 45%, because you know that's what's going to get you the best results with your product. You can set that with the button. You accept it by hitting the start button, and it's going to change the evaporator speed until you tell it otherwise. And then at the end of cycle, you're going to get an automatic suggestion from the smart software to say, do you want to save the last program you run? And so if you've done a program because you have a special recipe and you want to save that in memory, you don't have to go back and program it. At the end of the cycle where you've gotten your great results, you just say, yes, keep this for me. I want to use it again another time. So that's the automatic storing part. The pre-cooling function is the other thing that we talked about, which I think is really a fantastic feature. And again, it's one-touch access on the front of the control panel. Couldn't be any easier. You select a cycle. You select a blast chilling, or you select a shock freezing cycle, and you say, I want to pre-cool the unit. You hit that button, and it's automatically going to bring the chamber temperature down, the air temperature in the chamber, down to 31 degrees, unless you open the door sooner. Okay, it's going to prepare the blast chiller for the introduction of your product when it's ready, when it comes out of the oven. So this is the control panel, and again, what we're talking about doing, actually we're not talking about it, we've done it, I just have to finalize it and get it put in a nice format, but we've taken pictures of an operator who is going through the phases of activating these cycles, going to show you how to do your pre-cooling mode, how to do your infinity mode, how to access your memorized programs. So it's very easy and intuitive once you get your hands on it and do it once. Okay, next question. Anybody else?
Richard, it's Jay Lawson.
Hey, Jay, how you doing today?
Good. Thank you. Question on the roll-in model. It looked like that controller may have been angled a bit toward the door side, and there were a couple of stainless brackets below it. Maybe those are bumpers. Am I seeing that correctly?
Let me see if I can get here. Those are actually handles, I think.
To open the controller door?
Actually, they may be, you're right. I think they're bumpers probably to keep the carts from hitting in the controller as you go in and out of the door. That looks exactly right to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it is angled like that. And again, I think the positioning is for ease of access in the operation.
Okay. And the roll-ins would be all remote refrigeration?
The roll-ins are all remote refrigeration, exactly. Somebody asked that this morning if we have an onboard model, and currently we don't. I know that American Panel has one. I think that it does have some specific applications, but basically and this is the difference with the Williams philosophy when you had that pod with the smaller compressor on board as well on some of these roll-in units. The Fluenox philosophy is that these are expensive units that are designed purposely for doing blast chilling and shock freezing. You're going to want to operate them for those purposes to really maximize your investment. So yes, once you're done, it will go into conservation mode, but no, they do not believe in having an onboard smaller compressor just to make that more efficient, because that's not the problem that they're trying to optimize. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and as you can see in this picture, actually, while we're here, the green panic button on the inside, so the roll-in and the pass-through units do have locks on them, and they do have safety mechanisms inside in case something gets caught inside, just kind of like you would see on a regular walk-in unit. Any other questions?
Richard, this is Gary Finch. Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry, it's Jeff Yates here. I had a question in regards to the control panel and some of the smaller units. I see that it's in the door, and my question is how, obviously when you open the door, you'll see a wire feed to the control panel. How is that protected against cracking and time and all that?
I don't know if you can hear Jim. He's on the other side of the room from the speaker, but he's saying you don't see the wire when you open the door. It's routed through the unit. It's not exposed.
Oh, it's not exposed. Okay. And then my other question is, how long does it take if they need to change the control panel out? Is it like a quick disconnect, or is it hardwired?
It's fairly simple. A tech can probably do it in less than an hour.
Less than an hour. And then, do you guys, obviously these are made in Italy, is the control panel installed in the New Jersey plant, or is it installed in the Italian plant?
Oh, it comes as installed already.
Okay.
We will obviously be stocking spare parts here in Cherry Hill.
Okay.
Next question.
This is Gary Finch from Schultz Associates. I was just wondering about the installation of the roll-in cabinets. Are they a little simpler, more straightforward than the Williams, which seem to be like putting an erector set together? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here's the thing. They can actually ship these already mounted from Freelinox. They actually ship them on their sides, and you don't have to have them in the panel situation, unless, of course, I think if you get to the very big units, there's certainly going to be some assembly required if you're doing the 1,350-pound blast chiller, which is a couple of these strung together. But so that I think is going to be another big advantage. And by the way, something I neglected to mention on the earlier call, and I just remembered now, is that we are having all of these units sent to us in wood crates. We all know how much trouble we've been seeing with shipping around the United States, so since I'm getting them a container at a time, I could easily have them shipped with a lighter packaging. But because I know where they're going and how we want them to arrive, and that this is a top-of-the-line unit, they're all coming to us in wood crates, and they will ship out of here in wood crates. Next question. All right. Seems like there's quiet on the line. You guys are the beneficiaries of having me do this a second time, so I already tried to answer the questions that came up this morning. Thank you very much for attending our webinar. We're really pleased with the turnout today. Very, very excited about this new product. As you know, another milestone in the renovation of our whole line. The V-Series uprights are in production. These are going to be available. They are available. I just need to get you guys the pricing and the order quotes done in the next couple of weeks. And then, continuing with our product upgrade plan and having the horizontals ready beginning of next year. It's just going to be a fantastic 2013 for Victory, and we're glad you're all a part of it. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.